And I'm joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, I just had on your friend and colleague in the Army once upon a time, Representative Mike Pompeo. He reports to me, a couple of key deals. When the final mortars fell, there was not one wheel spinning in the American military to get relief to Benghazi. That's 7 hours after the first report. He also tells us at 3:42 the attack starts. Leon Panetta says, go save them at 7 p.m. 5 hours later, no one is deployed. Your reaction?
Well, both of those revelations are pretty shocking news, Hugh. They're well below the standard of care we would expect from the newest lieutenant leading a platoon in Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere else in the world. There's some dispute about whether any aircraft from Italy or elsewhere could have reached Libya, but there's no dispute that no one even tried. And I can tell you, as a platoon leader myself in Iraq, we routinely got our platoon spun up and ready to go out as a quick reaction force to help troops in contact, only be told to stand down at the last minute or to reach the objective and find out the firefight had ended. But at least we made the effort to go. And then second, the fact that neither Hillary Clinton nor Barack Obama were actively monitoring the situation, again, as we would expect any platoon leader in a combat zone to do if his troops were outside the wire and in contact, shows just how casually and carefree they took this and how little they wanted to draw attention to what Barack Obama has called one of his biggest foreign policy failures in Libya.
Now, in terms of the idea that, and we also had confirmed by Representative Pompeo, it was Qaddafyites who saved our annex forces. What does that tell you about this? And that the State Department had concerns that we not make this look like an invasion of Libya. That's why our Marines were changing in and out of uniforms.
Well, it goes to show that Hillary Clinton repeatedly did not provide the resources that our very capable ambassador, Chris Stevens, on the ground needed, even though we now know she called this her biggest accomplishment and probably planned to campaign for president on it, and even though we now know that she planned to go to Libya. If it was so important to have a permanent diplomatic facility in Benghazi, then we needed to commit the resources in Benghazi to keep our people safe there.
Now, in terms of chain of command, and the State Department is arguing on this call, get the Marines out in uniform, put them back into uniform. A Marine called from Philadelphia earlier today saying there's a shared chain of command over State Department security. What's your understanding of that, Senator Cotton?
Well, the ambassador in any country is the head of the country team, and he or she ultimately has the final decision unless that decision is countermanded by someone higher in the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. You would think that in a country that was so dangerous at the time and our troops and our diplomatic facilities were at such great risk that it would have received that kind of high-level attention, and we wouldn't have left the ambassador, Chris Stevens, very experienced though he was on his own, to be making these kind of calls.
There is also a report that President Obama on 9/12 did not read his presidential daily briefing. A written report was given to his usher, who gave it to the chief of staff, and the president didn't read it. Your reaction to that on the day after the massacre of 4 Americans?
Well, again, Hugh, I'd be very disappointed at that. I mean, I'm always surprised to hear that President Obama rarely takes an active briefing. You know, in my experience, intelligence briefings are good, but they're no substitute for sitting down with the analyst or sitting down with the senior leader and having an interactive exchange. But it's also of a piece with the fact that, you know, when something was politically popular, like the raid to kill Barack Obama, every senior leader was crammed into the Situation Room, as we've seen in that now famous photo. But when something was unpopular, as the intervention of Libya had become by September 2012, neither President Obama nor Hillary Clinton could be bothered to monitor the situation overnight. Again, that's far below what we would expect from a lieutenant on the front lines. It's even far below what past leaders would have expected. I've heard stories of George Shultz showing up at the State Department late at night just because there was an earthquake overseas and one of our embassies may have been damaged. Not an active attack in which we know people have been killed, but a simple natural disaster. That's the kind of leadership from Secretary Shultz that we should expect from Secretary Clinton and every other Secretary of State and from the President when they have diplomats and troops in contact.
Last question, Congressman Cotton. The Senator Cotton, Representative Pompeo said neither the President nor Secretary Clinton's hair was on fire that night after receiving a report of the attack. 3:42, the attack starts. Panetta says go at 7 p.m. Would your hair be on fire if you're in that chain of command?
I would certainly be actively monitoring the situation from the Situation Room. And the President is the only person who can insist that the resources go. You know, Hugh, I've been in the military Mike's been in the military. Your family members have been in the military. You know how the bureaucracy can always find an excuse to slow roll something, especially when it's an unplanned contingency across the sea, as this would have been. But if the President of the United States directs the Secretary of Defense and his combatant commander that he wants airplanes over Benghazi, and he wants them to put the fear of God in the United States of America into those jihadists, as was said in 13 hours, then that would happen. And the fact that the president wasn't willing to personally invest the time and the effort to make sure that we gave every resource available to try to stop that second wave of attacks is very damning.
Senator Tom Cotton, thanks for joining me early today to react to the Benghazi report.